goes Nevix.
Showing why he is the star player of this team.
London decided to use everything on that attack.
San Francisco Shock has a very good chance to hold right now.
Follow-up does come through from the Spitfire.
Oh, taken out by Danta, though.
And look at how much space Hurek has.
Great pick for San Francisco.
As this May has worked out quite well for the Spitfire.
Swaps over to the McCree, and Hurek just had an incredible game on this fire. He charges ultimate faster than anybody else, and actually ended up doing at some point around 32% of his team's total damage, which is a huge amount.
Sideshow, why have you been hiding Hurek when he can do this all along?
Well, his Pharah is kind of exceptional, but it's the only hero really that he can play better than the other players on his team. You've got Birdring, Rascal, Prophet on there. These are three of the best DPS players we have in the league.
I want to highlight this play because it's so great. This is San Francisco retreating after they just picked off the win. So they're thinking maybe we could go in now, but London knows that they need to get this rest going. Mercy can't go by alone, so you have Fury go in and help her. You have
the Spitfire, and here is a look at it one more time. We're going to be keeping our eyes on Fury throughout. A perfectly placed Diva Bomb is going to clear the air, and that is going to lock it up for our Spitfire. Moving on to game number 2 as this highlight closes out. Sideshow, I have to ask you, what did you expect to see from Fury when he was on the road to London from the get-go? Birdring on the Widowmaker, one of the best snipers we've seen in the league so far.
So when we saw San Francisco come out with this offense on the first attempt, I was already thinking this one is not going to work because they were just attempting a regular dive. After they realized, okay, this is not going to work, we need to switch it up, Sleepy goes over to the Sombra and was unable to actually finish the point on the EMP, which is really unfortunate as that's typically
even though their setup is going pretty well, you can't possibly take it when you're losing the 1v1s repeatedly. But Dosen gets a pick on Dante. This is the next part of the fight as well. We've got Birdring popping off in the back and picks on Baby B and Sleepy, and then Fury's playing like this. Like, even if your setup's good, you still have to have individual performance.
You're highlighting Birdring against Baby B, so Widow versus Widow, just to give you an idea of how... And the result of it is actually what's causing them and giving them a lot of trouble in these control maps like Oasis, because the ult management gets to be all over the place. What ended up happening in many of these sets in Oasis is that they are blowing ultimates at just incorrect timings. Instead of taking a lot of dry fights, which that means you just go for it without any ultimates to try to get something out of the opponent, to try to charge your own, they're just using them sporadically. You have Nuss using the Mercy ultimate.
Stalling out the attack from San Francisco Shock, but Dozen, huge plays always on that Zenyatta.
Well, when you're running this composition with the double sniper, it's kind of greedy because you're running only one support, and it falls apart when you get flanked from multiple angles, and you never expect the flanking Zenyatta going by himself against a Widowmaker, none other than Baby Base as well. So I think that London took a great audible cue here to just say, this is what they're running, let's just attack from multiple angles and force San Francisco to split their attention, and as a result, stall the first point way too long.
Yeah, and we always talk about this roster, London Spitfire, being incredible on paper, having so much individual talent, and it came out...
They were forced to blow about 5 ultimates to try to defend, and this is the aftermath of that one. San Francisco is trying to take a fight right here, but look at the time. They have so much time left. The payload is in a position where it hasn't actually capped the first point. By taking this fight right now, you're giving the position advantage to the London Spitfire. They're already established there, whereas if you wait for the point to go through, have them go through the corridor, you've got 5 ultimates. You can set up the position before Spitfire get there.
At the end of the series, London Spitfire will take it 3-1.
They will, though, as San Francisco, although they were fighting back after such a lot. Now the kills coming in for the Dragons.
Meanwhile, Jaehong, of course, picking off one, got low. Great start for the Shanghai Dragons, man.
Dio will win the duel.
Miro getting in there again, a little bit more damage. The Dragons will not be stopped. MG coming in, knocking him down right away. Toby comes in.
Whoa, Dio with the 3K.
Jaehong back on his famous support pick. Now Shanghai Dragons trying to come in. Seoul may be able to find that clutch team fight win. Oh, nice follow. Whoa! Oh, man.
We just got to point out what was going well, and it all starts with the supports here. This was the weakness of the Dragons. Altering was on point with his Mercy. It seems the whole team was protecting them a little bit better as well.
Yeah, Numbani, we saw them have a good performance against Florida Mayhem, and they seem to have built on that. They are looking pretty decent on this map. Undead had a really strong performance. His individual play is right up there right now. And Altering, as you were saying, increased in what we were expecting from him. They got so much value out of these Valkyries.
And they've showcased that they're willing to experiment and become...
He started it off by 1v1ing Dia when he pulled out his Dragon Blade. Misses the sleep dart, but still hits him. Biotic nade into the second one. Taken out.
Wait a minute, he's got the Mercy helping him out the whole
Sure,
time.
yeah, he absolutely does. But still, you wouldn't expect the support line to be able to deal with a Dragon Blade in Genji that much. But that kind of comes from Shanghai Dragons not supporting Dia as well. And it allows Jaehyung to have these moments where he just goes huge, because the game gets a little more scrappy, because Shanghai, although they look improved, are not quite as clinical as some of the other teams that we have in the Overwatch League. They're developing to that kind of level.
Then
But
you use your own, and that is what I think the Shanghai Dragons was doing very well in this series, understanding the timing windows that they had and keeping track of the enemy ultimates. It's so important, but it's such a simple thing that you might overlook, but it makes such a huge difference to understanding the timing windows as to where you can actually attack. And this is what that fight is, right? You see that the tire comes out, the Mercy ultimate comes out, but Altering has 90% on his. Sure, he dies, but the purpose of this fight is not to cap. It's the next one.
And of course, it went to that second point, and this is where Seoul was able to once again hold so strong. Ryu Jae-hong on that Zenyatta. You saw some great play from Toby so far on the Mercy, but let's talk about it.
Because now you have Dia playing the Junkrat. They get the initial pick, but because they got to set up first onto the point, now you have Orisa Roadhog, which is just threatening everywhere. Now you have the halt hook combination that can go anywhere, and because this setup is already on the point, the Seoul Dynasty composition just can't do anything to this. You don't have your Orisa Hog.
This opening round on University, who were some of the players that stood out to you, Sideshow?
Well, I think I was impressed by the team coordination running a completely different strategy here. Roshan and Sheshu are playing the Orisa Roadhog in this, and it requires a different approach to the game. And the Shanghai Dragons are still building up their strategy. We've only just seen them really develop the kind of cohesion that we saw today. So that's impressive to me.
Look at some of the highlights. We're going to keep our eyes on the tank to open this one up. Miro just able to get so many players off of the rest of his squad, constantly jumping on the McCree. And I want to ask you, Sideshow, when it comes to the comp, did Shanghai do anything wrong? How did you feel about seeing a McCree as well as a Tracer coming in from the Dragon?
Well, I actually think the Shanghai Dragons played this fairly well. They had a kind of tank buster mentality coming into it. Actually, in the first two fights of this stage on Gardens, Miro and Zephyr were both
This is the deciding moment, and Toby goes back to what he made a name for himself on. The Lucio is into action.
Yeah, he got 7 final blows actually on this stage, 7 actual kills secured. The guy's a monster on Lucio, and it helped them get so much aggression out. And it's impossible if you're the Shanghai Dragons here trying to play this anti-dive where you're trying to blow up Miro when he dives in. You've got walls to your back. This is very much a circular point with very narrow choke points. Very difficult to play this kind of style, and Seoul have used it.
Toby able to pick up so many kills. Let's take a look at how it all started. To be honest, it wasn't a great start for the Shanghai Dragons. For a moment, I was a little bit worried we'd see a full hold.
It very much looked like a full hold. In fact, Seoul Dynasty were only about a fraction of a fight away from utterly locking this down and looking completely dominant on the first. I think there was a slight bit of hubris from them. They felt like they could push in and completely lock off the full hold, and then they just got snowballed all the way back.
Exactly, a payload in motion stays in motion, in the wise words of Winston. And with the Valkyrie coming out, it was very easy to keep staggering this whole.
Wow, unbelievable! The final map of this series goes for the Shanghai Dragons. Just when Seoul Dynasty prior to this game are looking better than ever. And
Never surrender.
Soon is one of the best tracers, I feel like, in this league.
It's going to be Big Goose using the Valkyrie here. When we talk about the Valiant, it's about their aggressive engages. It's been a tremendous defense here from the Los Angeles Gladiators. And that was a good call from the LA Valiant.
It's like playing chicken with the enemy, and that time Gladiators are going to have the dinner for free.
Good start for LA.
Really well. Great plays back and forth. We'll start off with Shore for a little closer look of exactly how he used his barrage. This opened things up for the Gladiators, but as the game played out, Sideshow, what were you looking out for from both squads?
Well, for the Los Angeles Valiant, I had a lot of question marks coming into this one. For example, why were Kariv and Unko kind of switching their roles around and Kariv playing the Zen? Why did they have agilities in when he seemed to be playing over the top of Silk Thread's hero pool, playing some of that Soldier 76, playing the Pharah? So there were question marks for me about the Valiant, but Gladiators just played their game and came out and looked phenomenal.
Yeah, some of the question marks for the Gladiators were sure for what is his champion pool going to look like. Well, you know he has Pharah for the first point. Widowmaker came out in the second one. But when it came down to the defense of Icon...
And this is the deep dive. I want you to watch how deep Remix goes to save all of this space. Look at him. He's just diving way in. He's obviously going to die. But it doesn't matter because Shaz has got the Valkyrie. He's going to come in. And with these double reses...
From the quad tanks of the Gladiators on the attack.
This is just a nearly immaculate quad tank from the Gladiators. They recognized that the Valiant was set up on the right. They went right under and get on the point immediately, and all it takes is just time here. They were very patient with their abilities, and most of all, you have Shaz being very close to his tank line. That's incredibly valuable for getting that maximum amount of heal. You get your ultimate in about 40 seconds this time around. Great timing, and then unfortunately they weren't able to snowball into the second point, but they got it in the end.
And Valiant weren't able even to capture. And at the start, it was Soon, the man that just gave us the interview all over on the Widowmaker.
It wasn't even close in this 1v1 versus Asher, because Asher ended up hitting 0 elims and 0 actual final blows with 4 deaths, while Soon was walking all over the place. They tried to run this quad tank for the Gladiators before Gladiators were, Valiant was prepared, and it just was a steamrolled map.
I think this gave them a bit of momentum coming into Ilios in general, and the reverse sweep, which they managed to pull off here. They had incredibly close second 2 stages, and it was difficult to fight against hydration, but on this point in particular, iRemix was punished so hard. It's not like Well, where you can just tap
Soon on defense, again causing problems with the Widowmaker to open things up.
He caused problems, but I think the biggest issue here was the composition from the Gladiators. This is just too spread out. You've got D.Va, Orisa, and Roadhog, but only one support. Either go with double snipers or go full tank with the Bastion. So instead of all ending on one strat, they try to go for both, and it backfires.
And you talked about the Gladiators making a big blunder. They went all in to stop on their point A. Unfortunately, Valiant was able to unlock point A and then kept the cart rolling. This was a huge play, though, by Bijou. The triple kept the Gladiators in it.
It really did, and Valiant had to clutch it in the final moments, but in some sense, this was the Gladiators in a super tense situation, and you could just see it crumbling, slipping away from them as Shaz realizes the mistake he's made and falls to his death. And the same with Asher here as well. He takes a shot. So much pressure.
I was talking to Bijou, what's the game plan? He said, we're using the 6 strat. I was like, what? He said, yeah, when I'm sick, this is the strat we use. Well, right away, it was the Valiant jumping off to a massive lead in our first round. It got a little bit closer towards the end, but I felt like Valiant always felt like they were in the driver's seat.
Well, the unfortunate thing about the 6 strat is that it's not the first time it has come out. We have seen Surefour bust out the Widowmaker before, especially on Gardens here, and so Valiant gets to prepare against it. And not only that, Valiant actually lost Game 5 to London because they busted out the Widowmaker on that point, so they were very prepared.
In a 3-2 reverse sweep victory. Wow. Valiant. Pick your poison, essentially. There's a lot of threats here for the Spitfire to use. This is astonishing from the Boston Uprising. They put this defense together so comfortably. Good dive in from Boston to find that first target.
That's a big, resounding fight win for London.
Who's got the hot hand? That was a masterclass from the Spitfire. Huge turnaround. Boston make it a real game.
Started to follow, and it was all about the Pharas, Johnny.
Yes, and it was a bit surprising to see Hurig in the starting lineup. Now, I wanted to see some Doomfist, but obviously Doomfist is not really in the meta, so we saw the Pharah come out. And I think this was a read from the coaching staff of London Spitfire, knowing that Dreamcasper isn't that good on the McCree and Soldier. Now, he did play it, he did pretty well for himself, but overall, I think that Boston Uprising weren't in their comfort zone in this matchup. So it played out pretty well for the London Spitfire, but it was close on Nobani.
Both teams were pretty successful on their attacks, and let's talk about what was working for them, Brett.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in general, it was a very clinical sort of play style all around.
Highlights. Let's talk about the players that were going off. Note, fantastic work on the D.Va throughout our first 2 games, but Dreamcasper was all over this kill feed.
I mean, overall, I think that Boston Uprising just executed really well, but London Spitfire didn't really put up that much resistance. It's very unlike any of these top teams. We have New York, we have London, and of course Seoul. But London Spitfire is now looking like the weakest one of the 3, I would say. Boston Uprising just steaming through this entire round on the Temple of Anubis.
Yeah, and Johnny, I agree with your assumption there.
London holding the high ground with the Orisa, of course, but we don't see a Junkrat in the lineup. Instead, we see Rascal on the Genji. So we're just going to look at Gamsu and Dreamcasper pretty much just roam the entire point and have their will. Taking down the supports early, Nos and the Dozen, of course, and without that healing in the long run, well, Boston Uprising is going to capture the point. So it's a bit surprising to see London
control points.
Yeah, in general, across the board, London have never really looked too strong on control. They're a good team in general, but the sort of play style that control demands, London has never been their strongest suit. In fact, multiple times they were sort of testing going into these team fights, looking a little bit shaky. Boston, however, looking much more prepared overall.
Yeah, well, they don't take the initiative that we usually see these top 3 teams do. They like to play so fast, but London Spitfire in this matchup, I'd say, way more passive and try to make room for Hureg in this case on the hit scan. Play them a Kree to shut down.
Take a look at some of the action here. Prophet back in the action on the Genji, had some massive Dragon Blades.
I mean, they kickstarted the action with Birding and Prophet, right? They just made plays all over the place. But at the same time, I want to highlight on the first point of Junkertown on attack. We saw London Spitfire go for the dive with Birding and Prophet, and usually we see both teams go for the Orisa, you know, with the Junkrat, the Roadhog, the Widowmakers. But then again, London Spitfire, they were running dive there as well. So it just adds to the point of them not being able to adapt as sufficiently. And
again, it's similar results. We thought it was going to be London Spitfire walking away with an early lead, but Boston never goes down in these controls. You're highlighting Striker went off in this Game 5.
Yeah, in general, not even just in Game 5, across the whole board of this entire match, he had a ridiculous game. His Gamsu as well with the double support kill. This was imperative in them winning this map out. He had such massive plays as well, but if we're talking about Striker, overall, here's the danger with Boston, right? If you try and focus down Dreamcatcher as a player...
Done it! 3-2! Victory over the Spitfire. They've knocked them out of the sky. And they've ended the streak.
I mean, you have the element of surprise for Philly.
Meko, it's an easy pickup for him. Sabiolbi is also here.
Anytime you have Carpe and Shadowburn, you have a fighting chance in a match. And then also, Poco had a very good contender.
NYXL once again stabilized here in a second stage. Very good approach there from Neko.
Beautiful play there. Now it's going to be the Philadelphia Fusion gaining some more progress.
NYXL put the foot down. What do you say about that?
Plays coming out and being the difference makers. We saw some Pharah versus Pharah, for example, versus on the first point here on Numbani, and it just comes down to whatever Pharah wins the Pharah battle, if Shadowburn can get a good blade off, if Libero can be clutched, etc. It's the small things, and so far it's been very even.
Yeah, I mean, I pointed out beforehand that Boombox needs to step up in terms of his play to match Jonak. You can see this guy right here. I mean, he's getting kills all over the place, but the difference is between Boombox and Jonak's play, I feel, is going to be their ult efficiency, their ult sort of usage. Boombox doesn't seem to be using it. In general, he was playing very, very well with his Valkyries, making a lot of movements around the map. The heals were very good, and he prioritizes survivability over anything else. And I feel like it's crucial to point this out because a lot of these Mercies, they can go unnoticed a lot of ways. Yeah, they can go unnoticed in the maps quite often, and it's nice to point out Ark in particular because he does prioritize the survivability, and he gets out significantly more heals than his counterpart on the enemy team.
Minutes, basically. They captured point A, which is 17 seconds left on the clock. And Johnny, I have to ask you about this composition. Roadhog, Orisa, Junkrat, and a Sniper. What was the game plan for New York?
I mean, it is hard, right? You just want to peel for Sabiolbi on the Widowmaker, of course, so Sabiolbi can find the picks. And it just becomes a brawl yet again, because Philadelphia Fusion, they're playing with a Tracer on Carpe, so they want to take the fight around the point so that Carpe can pretty much be a fish in the, or a shark in the water, basically, just snipping up anyone who drops down onto the point. But when you have a Widowmaker and you have a Junkrat, they're always going to stand up on the high ground, so it's a bit weird, because you have to force New York down. They don't necessarily want to go down.
We highlighted the DPS from Philadelphia Fusion, Shadowburn and Carpe, and basically every single match they have played, they were two massive factors for Philly's success. You saw Shadowburn leading the way on the attack, Carpe, some ridiculous defense on the Widowmaker.
Yeah, for sure. Carpe is one of these
players in their early victories, Brent.
Yeah, for me, it was this initial round was going the way of Philadelphia, mainly because Carpe was keeping everyone in check, and Sabiolbi wasn't really pressuring Carpe at all in this fight. In fact, as a little statistic here, Pine and Carpe were actually matched equally. They got 3 kills apiece on each other. They were really just keeping each other in check. They both had moments where they were popping off, but Philly did a great job of sort of shutting down Pine and not letting it happen. However, there was a turning point in the later rounds.
And Johnny, what do we see there as we went to the second and third heat of Ilios?
Well, we see Philadelphia Fusion overall, they're so good at capturing this first point, right?
Meanwhile, we have Sabiolbi who is lighting it up on the Widowmaker. He was getting it done on the Tracer. The Widow, though, causing so many problems here as we saw the initial defense coming in from New York.
I was honestly losing my mind watching these games because everything was going New York Excelsior's way in terms of the way they wanted to go, but this was the issue here. This guy, Shadowburn on the Genji, but also Carpe, this DPS duo just somehow managed to upset any sort of team play that New York Excelsior were trying to get across. And honestly, I feel like we need to coin some sort of new term for when the DPS is just overwhelming. Like, it's ridiculous.
Shadowburn and Carpe went off, but this first point, so close, back and forth in both directions, Bren.
Yeah, utterly ridiculous map in general, because me and Johnny were losing our minds watching this. It was ridiculous. Carpe and Shadowburn, again, these guys, we've got to point them out because they were absolutely nutty. The clutch potential from them, constantly with the Dragon Blades and whatnot. In fact, the final game-winning moment for Philadelphia Fusion was off the back of Shadowburn's immense game sense on Genji and knowing when to engage with the Dragon Blades. But all around, general, in fantastic DPS play, and it really comes down to New York Excelsior, again, being too passive. It's a similar issue that London Spitfire had in the previous series.
Bring our second massive upset of the day. This time against the New York Excelsior.
Oh boy, here we go. Florida Mayhem on the attack. The hooks from Maniton have been so good, and Aaron Logix with the cleanup. Jake just seems untouchable at this point. Houston Outlaws handling the respawns extremely well.
Getting rockets in onto the point, doing as much damage as possible.
Oh man, he is tempting fate.
Talk we've had throughout the day, really, with Swoosh being a more aggressive Winston. He shut down the dives from Houston Outlaws pretty well. He didn't give Jake or Linkser a lot of room to work with on the Houston Outlaws part of things. So I think that this matchup in general started to look like it played into Florida Mayhem. And throughout this point, because the point itself is so long itself, it's so hard for Jake and Linkser to reach those backline support members of Supe and Sebosei, of course. So I thought that this matchup could actually take a turn for the better and actually have Florida Mayhem coming out on top.
We saw a chance there for Florida, Bren, but Houston shut that chance down when it was Florida on the attack. What did we see?
A lot of Jake, to be honest. That's the guy I want to talk about because his blades in general
good for Florida, because in my opinion, it was, okay, Logis got a nice headshot, but overall, it looked like it was the Linkser show on the map throughout, because I mean Linkser was just popping off on the Widow, and I mean we saw towards the end of point B, Linkser was on a 10 kill streak. I mean he was just popping off on this Widow on both attacks and defense.
Yeah, in general he was a pretty big nuisance for Florida Mayhem, and they kind of just tried to ignore him. And this particular clip here, you'll see, like, they just don't even look at him. They're like, okay, if we ignore Linkser, then maybe he won't get the kills and we'll be able to take the fight. But you just can't do that. In fact, it leads to their downfall. They realize too little too late that they have to deal with him, and it ultimately ends up with Houston Outlaws taking the map in the end, as you can see here. This is the final moment.
What did you see from Linkser early on from the Outlaws?
Oh my goodness. I mean, the guy was ridiculous all around, to be honest, on this map. Like, yes, Florida Mayhem took it to 99%, but Linkser was the reason why they didn't actually complete up that round for various reasons, and we might see it in this general highlight reel here as to his play. You were right, Puckett. Kavik had a great standing, but Linkser, this is the guy to watch for, right? His Dragon Blades were absolutely ridiculous, and this was the winning moment, actually. This is what stopped them on that first initial round from actually closing it out entirely.
Put it out because it's textbook, okay? So Houston Outlaws in this case, they're playing in a double sniper composition. So we have Linkser on the Widowmaker on your left, and we have Jake on the Hanzo on the right, and Raucus on the Bastion. So as we're going to see Florida Mayhem come out of this choke right here and try to pressure the payload, there's so many threats on this Houston Outlaws lineup. So Florida Mayhem playing a slow composition, they can't really deal with it. We're just going to play this one out. And we're going to see Logix coming out to the left, going to contest Muma, and then realize this and actually go for Linkser. But there's just nothing that Florida Mayhem can do in this case, because the positioning coming out from Houston Outlaws is so beautiful. I mean, the coach Tyrong, he's one of my favorite coaches overall because of his strategic, incredible game sense, and of course, I mean, this Houston Outlaws team has improved so much over him.
What a finish! What a finish from Linkser!
I mentioned before, he's finally found his home, a nomad in Overwatch up to this point. Started out his career in a team called Flat Earth. Moved over to...
You wanted a blockbuster match? Time to break out the fancy cookware, and NYXL coming out on top in a lot of these engagements. Alpine's starting to feel it. This might be the go signal for Seoul Dynasty now. No resurrection, no second chances. This is some close quarter stuff. Toby's waiting in line to show the world what he's made. And it seems to have done the job. That's a pure 1v1. And they bring it home in style.
As we see see the hold on Eichenwald.
This was crazy because you can see Jonak and Ark sat at the back here, and Cookie makes this leap to try and deal with the supports, and Libero realizes, this is my time. Syncs up with Sabiobi as he comes in, and Libero gets massive.
The quad take was just running through Seoul. Flood had some nice plays on the Widow, but you look at this first half, Seoul, they have, what, 2 minutes for their second attack? Meanwhile, it's almost 6 minutes in the bank for New York. And somehow, by the end of this game, it's Seoul walking away with the victory. As we're watching through the highlights in chronological order, talk me through some of the big moments of the game, Sideshow.
So New York Excelsior coming out with this quad tank push was phenomenal. And Seoul instantly made an adaptation. They moved Fleta from the Genji over to the Junkrat, which deals so much more damage. But Sabiobi read it. This is the preparation that we're talking about. Sabiobi went over to the Widowmaker so that Fleta couldn't get that kind of Junkrat performance. And because we saw 3 whole iterations, we saw the different mind games between these two teams. Are they going to run quad tank on the offense? Can we afford to put Fleta on the Junkrat, or should we run the more stable dive kind of compositions? In the end, Seoul were able to make the adaptations.
Yes, and this kind of in-game adaptation is what we highlighted before, of course.
Dynasty that Seoul had in their first 5 matches coming into this one. Let's go back to game number 3, and this is where we're a little bit worried. There was no Pine in the mix, but the coaches for New York shown us they had a game plan and they executed.
Oh, they had a fantastic game plan. They have crafted a composition and a strategy that works so well against Seoul Dynasty. You can't quite see it here because this is when Mano had switched over to the Winston, but they were running their main tank on Roadhog with the D.Va, and then they have Libero up in the air. And the combination of these two factors means that Fleta has to focus on Libero because he's up in the skies. You can see this composition now on the top right-hand side of your screen, and it means that the Roadhog and D.Va can just wreck Kuki and Zunba. They were focused.
We looked at each other on the analyst desk and we said, wow, New York just won this game. Incredible stop. But Seoul never going away. A ridiculous performance on their own defensive stance.
Absolutely, and we know that Seoul are fantastic at the defenses on the 3rd point, but we've not seen something like this on the 1st. And I think the key difference in compositions here, you can see it at the top, is that, or you actually can't from this point of view because this is when Seoul were attacking, sorry. But in general, they were running Jaehong mostly on the Roadhog. Now you can see it. They were running this solo heal, Toby Mercy, and they had 3 tanks plus all the damage that they needed. And it was so difficult for New York Excel to be able to crack through this. They got stalled out again and again and again.
Johnny, what did you think of putting Ryu Jaehong on a Roadhog and then Wiki on the Junkrat here for Junkertown?
Well, it works out, right? If they just play with the
Obi popping off, but it was his tank so clutch. This is Mono opening up with a pick on Toby. Unfortunately, Seoul was still able to win this fight without their mercy.
Yes, they were, but this composition again came out from New York Excel, where they're focusing down the tanks. The difference in tank kills on Li Zhang was absolutely massive. NYXL's tanks had 21 kills over the course of the map. Seoul's tanks only had 9. They were focusing on setting up Fleta, but Cookie and Zumba, again, were just getting destroyed. The Zenyatta gives the Discord, and Seoul are playing with a Lucio for this stage. They don't have the ability to answer that kind of composition.
Yes, again, it comes down to Fleta so much in these control maps that he has to make the plays. Now they subbed in Bunny, of course, on the Tracer, but he necessarily didn't show up, as we usually see these substitutions for Seoul Dynasty, so I was a bit disappointed.
The Kings of Overwatch League, New York Excel, they have done it 3-2.
The Philly boys.
We see Shadowburn obviously play the Genji a ton. That's the hero he's known for. How much talent is on this team?
Shanghai Dragons walking in like a boss. Hey, wow, really committing to this.
Pyko gets 3. It's a self-destruct Bonanza. What a spectacle.
Oh, but the kill's coming back around for the Shanghai Dragons.
Huge. The Philadelphia Fusion. What a strong start.
It's Eichenwald and Sideshow. I want you to just kind of talk to us. What kind of issues were you seeing come through for the Dragons?
Well, Monty referenced that this could have been a trap game for Philadelphia Fusion because he was expecting Shanghai to have put most of their emphasis on practicing these maps. And unfortunately, it looks like Shanghai have actually just kind of focused on Numbani in particular in terms of the hybrid maps, and they were really struggling to crack this Pharah defense. They don't have enough of a game plan to take space, and instead they were just getting so much pressure onto Undead. They were kind of saying, okay, Undead, you're on the McCree, you have to deal with Shadowburn and also deal with Carpe and also get picks on the tanks. That's too much responsibility for one guy.
And also it seems like we're missing a tank in this Shanghai Dragons lineup with a more passive, defensively minded approach to this game. So we see that
Shadowburn went off yesterday, and already we can see him performing well on multiple heroes, starting off with the Pharah.
Yeah, and they're playing pretty aggressively here with the Pharah as well. They're not giving any space to the Shanghai Dragons to come in. Now, if this was Numbani, we'd see Undead come up onto the high ground and have a slightly better opportunity to kill Shadowburn. But this is a very different map. The way that you deal with the Pharah, you're sat on the low ground, you have to try and make space. That would have been sick if
right?
that straight away drifted away as well. But Shadowburn's an excellent Pharah, and you can't just allow him to drift around in the air like this. So,
I mean, to be fair,
yeah.
Ikemal, it's a really hard map to actually kill this Pharah because the way Shadowburn navigates...
It was kind of the Philadelphia Fusion show, but Shanghai was able to force it to a second point.
It was, and again, there was the Shadowburn show with the Junkrat. I like to believe, okay, we got Carpe popping off, getting some headshots, bam. But then again, it was Shadowburn with the Genji and with the Junkrat. It's just so annoying to deal with this kind of approach when you're the aggressive team in Shanghai Dragons. You're forced to leap forward with the Winston, but there's always the Junkrat mines and the traps, etc. to deal with this kind of aggression. So Philadelphia Fusion overall, I think they shut down Shanghai Dragons pretty effectively here.
And we saw a little bit about Dayfi. We'll talk about him in a moment. Sideshow, I want to hear from you, though, about Undead, because when we look at these highlights, this was a ridiculous play on the McCree.
It really was, but he's under so much pressure. The guy's got talent, it's undeniable. We've seen him pop off in previous matches. Unless Deer and Undead had an unreal performance, Shadowburn and Carpe were going to walk all over them, because this is such a good map for the Pharah, and that creates a lot of space for Carpe to do his work on the floor. But as we thought was a potential possibility, Undead and Dia did go off on this map.
Yes, exactly. We saw actually that they managed to shut down Carpe pretty efficiently. Undead often needs help from all of his members to actually shut down Carpe, because Carpe is always there poking with the Tracer. But we saw some flanks coming out of Undead, you know, the flashbangs around the corners. We saw the Deadeye, of course, on the elevator where you jump up. And then we saw the Junkrat coming out of Dia. So they shut down the DPS of the Philadelphia Fusion pretty good. And throughout this series, they had so much time to deal with. So Undead and Dia...
Well, I guess the series is over. It looked like Shanghai was going to get stuffed before the bridge. They weren't even going to move this payload under the bridge. Eventually, they break through, and during overtime, they move it all the way to 93 meters on the third point.
Yes, and I would give a lot of credit to Dia here on the Tracer, actually, because Carpe on the Widowmaker, he focused the other members of Shanghai Dragons so hard. So Dia on the Tracer, he had so much room and space on this map to shut down the backline of Philadelphia Fusion and get picks. So pretty much every fight you see on this map, you saw that Shanghai Dragons were up a member or two, simply because Dia had so much time and space, and he actually showed up mechanically as well, we have to mention, to actually get some damage onto the backline of Philadelphia.
What I think is really quite surprising or interesting about this as well is that Philadelphia Fusion in this final fight around the payload looked like they might have been able to clutch it and actually push it in overtime.
Yes, exactly, because you see Carpe always popping up on that Tracer. I mean, this is a hometown map for DPS players, and so when you have Carpe and Shadowburn, this is the map they can really shine on, regardless of what happens with the tanks and supports. I'd say it's so reliant on the DPS players themselves. So Shadowburn, he is so close to the enemy team whenever they come out of spawn, so he has so much power to initiate the fight how he wants and to pop Dragon Blades around corners and easily reach the backline of Shanghai Dragons, rather than to rely on tags necessarily to set him up.
Sideshow, yesterday, we had Johnny say that Sabiobi's the best Tracer in the game. He repeated it again today. Officially, is Shadowburn the best Genji in the Overwatch League?
I'm actually not sure about this one. There are a lot of good Genjis in the Overwatch League, but not all of them are at their best form right now. Guys like Prophet, he's incredible at Genji. We've got Shadowburn's definitely in that. Who else is around that kind of level?
Will be taken to the limit, but will still take the win. A nail biter for the Fusion, but they look comfortable and controlled on Lee Jung. Fraggy making sure Shanghai didn't have an opportunity to get back in.
Yeah, this one's gonna get hot. It's all Dallas right now. Custa coming back in, and on the other side is going to be their opponents, the San Francisco Shock. Taimu coming in, takes a nail biter on Ilios. Parry Hook might be able to win this fight. Sleepy was ready for it. Ooh, that was a close call, man.
In a draw, but there were some great moments along the way.
There certainly were, but in general, me and Johnny were fairly disappointed with the play coming out from Dallas.
To say the least.
Yeah, they had a weird game plan coming into this one. You can see the composition that they were running, and San Francisco Shock were able to stop them here for an unbelievable amount of time. I think it was 3 minutes in total, because they're trying to push a high ground with an Orisa and a Hog and a Junkrat. How do they think this is going to work? And then on the defense, they just get slowly pushed back. To be fair, San Francisco Shock made the most of it, but Dallas had a weird idea coming into this one.
Johnny, I know you like to look at these comps and break it down.
Yeah.
What's the thought process behind the Dallas Fuel's approach?
It has to be that they build around effect on the McCree, of course. I think that they expected San Francisco Shock to bring out the Pharah, of course. So then they want effect on the McCree, obviously, to shut down the aerial threat. So you want Seagull to be able to peel for effect, shut down any Tracers, Dante in this case, and shut down any Genjis, and get these kind of big highlights, game-winning kills.
And, I mean, he had a fantastic performance here as well. But when it came to their time bank push, where they could actually win the map, they somehow, for some reason, decided to play much safer and just had repeated pushes that weren't well executed and allowed Effect so much space to just dunk on Baby Bear across the map.
Yeah, no, I think they acknowledged that Effect was the threat on Dallas Fuel lineup. But the thing was that Dallas Fuel played so well, Kusta and Chips high-end played so well around Effect, so they repeatedly resurrected Effect all the time. I think if Effect had the highest amount of death in the Dallas
San Francisco's previous best showing on this map.
Yeah, San Francisco had only taken, or they had failed to take, in fact, the second tick of point A, and that was against the Shanghai Dragons when they were looking weaker than they are right now as well. So San Francisco Shock coming into this, you've got to think, were the underdogs on Horizon. But again, Dallas Fuel come out with a really weird offensive composition. You can see here they're pushing in overtime because they're trying to use an Orisa Hog offense with a Junkrat. Again, this composition to me, it makes no sense. But they're able just to kind of bludgeon their way through it in the end.
Yeah, and again, of course it makes sense if you get to the point because you have an Orisa and you have a lot of heroes that are good at pressuring the point and forcing San Francisco to do unusual movements, I'd like to say, force them out of their comfort zone. But why not just play quad tank, which we've seen all the top teams in the league, they play the quad tank with the Moira, and they have a Lucio to speed up the process and get to the point faster, avoid getting picked off. But we just see a slow Orisa comp with a Senyara and Mercy from Dallas Fuel, and so it took so long for them to cap point A. And then on point B, they...
Coming into the control, what did we see?
Well, we saw the Orisa, Roadhog, and McCree composition, of course, and you have to say it worked out pretty flawlessly. They built it around punishing San Francisco Shock's positional mistakes and perhaps their lack of patience. We could see repeatedly Dante on the Genji dashing through the Dallas Fuel lineup and just getting picked by the Junkrat, the Widowmaker, the Roadhog, everything. So they capitalized on San Francisco's poor positioning and they got the picks needed every time.
Yeah, I think in general, when we saw that composition come out on Ilios, San Francisco Shock were unfortunately not able to crack it. You know, they had Baby Bay above in the sky doing huge amounts of damage from his Pharah, but they couldn't sync up that damage with Dante on Genji and a tank diving in, and so Dallas Fuel just picked them off one by one. And you got to say that Mickey had a hell of a game.
He
Mickey on the
absolutely
Roadhog,
did.
He had a crazy hook percentage. He was playing phenomenally. We've had question marks about this guy before because he didn't look like he was playing aggressively enough, and the few times he played the Roadhog, it was like, why not just put time in with
Well, lock out the San Francisco Shock.
Talk about turnaround for Dallas Fuel. You're sitting at the bottom of the league, not a win to your name, and then you just sweep the San Francisco Shock to get your first W, 3-0.
We knew it was going to be great. No one thought it would be this good, though. Seoul Dynasty finally falling at the hands of Sabiobi in the NYXL. A little bit later, we thought Philadelphia Fusion was going to run away with the series. No, the Dragons fight back. They force a Game 5 and are ever improving. And
Extremely impressed with how Boston came out there on control.
Dallas Fuel resoundingly winning this team fight.
Strike is being very, very slippery, very hard to catch.
Mickey holding strong. Revenge.
Oh, I get excited about that stuff, man. Hold me.
Dallas dominates. Boston looking very good here on defense.
Oh, that's beautiful.
The duel has begun.
As we take a look at some of the highlights, Dive, you would think it's going to be the superior competition on Numbani.
So, superior is absolutely correct, Bucket. It should be, in theory, right? You're running this immobile composition that Dallas are running, mainly because it's their comfort heroes, it's their comfort picks. They can't run the dive composition too well with XQC not being able to play. So Dallas have opted to run with this Orisa combo, and Boston, I actually feel like this is them going into it with the same attitude that they have against teams that run dive. So they're not waiting it out, they're not being patient. It's throwing them off guard a little bit. They're playing it similar to how they played against London, actually, by playing sort of hyper-aggressive dive, whereas with this composition, it's okay to just wait and let Dallas push out, let them take positionings, and then wait for your openings and your opportunities to capitalize off a little bit later on.
All right, well, we did one of the slowest tanks in the game, but somehow Dallas made it work on their attack.
Yeah, in general, it was just very good coordinated play from Dallas, to be honest. But Boston did end up coming back from this, right? And this is the issue here, is because you run this composition on a map like Anubis, it is very choke pointy, but at the same time, it's very sort of open, and it allows sort of when you run heroes like Genji, like the D.Va, like the Winston, you got a lot of angles of attacks to come in from. So Boston did end up clinching out this map based on that fact alone. This composition does have limitations, it does have weaknesses, and they were made more evident here on Anubis.
I think you definitely saw it on the defense as well. What was that, 30 seconds to take point A for Boston?
Ridiculous. Yeah, exactly. And that's how it should be.
When the Tracer gets on the Orisa, you just don't have any way to deal with it. Your Hall is not going to catch it.
Really just highlights that Boston were making adaptations as the game was going on. So this is basically exactly what you have to do. Dive onto the backlines hard and fast when you see an opening, and that's exactly what they found. They realized, as you know, when Orisa doesn't have her shield let down.
Mickey on the Roadhog living up, but Striker started to pop off with this Tracer.
And Striker was having a sick game on his Tracer. I mean, he was already at the halftime a candidate for player of the game, but what I think struck me very oddly in this map was that we have a quick Widowmaker duel and immediately a swap right back into the Genji Tracer, and it's just a devolution really of the map.
Yeah, so the most notable thing for me was Dreamcaster's performance in general. How he was staying alive in his team fights, being supported quite a lot by his team, but he actually had 40% of his team's total damage done in this map on Ilios. That's crazy. I mean, to compare that to what you normally get on a DPS, 30% is considered very high, right?
This game, and I want to get your thoughts starting with Brent. Who was impressing you on these first two pushes? Because Dallas is making some quick time.
Absolutely, yeah. So this composition, it seems to be working wonders for Dallas, really playing in these comfort roles. But Mickey, the guy who we've seen just there, is one of the players who I really want to point out as one of the highlights here, because his Roadhog in the past, I mentioned it in the pre-show, hasn't been great. It hasn't been great at all. But I know for a fact that Taimu has been personally coaching Mickey on Roadhog, on the ins and outs of the hero, and he has been putting up an admirable performance so far. So I got to say, Mickey, for me, has really enabled this team. And Boston, they weren't really playing around it too well. They were trying to run Fire Mercy. That's what they came out with, out of the gate on the defense. Again, it didn't work out for them because they seemed to get rolled and had trouble trying to pick up effect in general. A lot of emphasis trying to bring down effect, but he's just so good at staying alive.
It wasn't a very coordinated event.
Subbing in for Note, why would they want to make this move?
Right, so this is important to point out because Note has been playing the entire match. He played in the entirety against London as well. So you may be wondering why bring in Kalios, but Kalios seems more accustomed to playing the sort of tank-based compositions and making the switches that they needed to combat Dallas Fuel. It seemed like No was a little bit uncomfortable playing against the composition that Dallas Fuel were running.
And Kalios looked a lot better when dealing with the Hall combinations. The Hall is really the bread and butter of the Hall hook combo. So if your D.Va is on point and can just absorb it every time with Defense Matrix, then half of that combination goes out the window. And I think that's what really allowed Boston to start taking fights at a pace.
3-2, the scoreboard. Another one in the back pocket for the Uprising. What a week it's been for them.
They complete a tremendous week for Boston.
Here we go again. Envy coming in with the dive.
Manitin raining rockets in onto the point.
LA Valiant getting their attack run going.
But there are so many kills coming in here for Florida Mayhem.
Ooh, Snipe Fever.
Logix, he's relentless.
He's so brave. Kareem snipes it out of the air.
And they are making progress, Florida.
That's what I like to see, man. That was an incredible run from LA Valiant.
You guys aren't going to bring the fight to me. Well, I'm going to go to you, and you aren't going to like it.
Looks like Florida's already in the retirement home, so they look like they're super ahead of the
Like
well,
that.
You have the Valiant on the second point of Eichenwald, literally 5v6 them at the choke since the point started. They just flew right away, and they have Kareem Zenyatta ride the payload the whole way through. So they just put us a show, and Mayhem had nothing to say about it.
And Brendan, the numbers were ridiculous. You were looking at the stats, and you said after the Valiant's attack, they've had 10 times the final blows.
Yeah, it was kind of ridiculous, to be honest. 40 deaths, I believe, or 40 final blows compared to Florida's 4, which is a massive discrepancy. It's huge, honestly. And I honestly felt like Florida played a lot better in the second round of Eichenwald. They actually, in general, I think Florida, they were on the defense to begin with, so I'll start with that. But they were looking a lot better, actually. They were showing a bit of flexibility in terms of what they like to run. We saw a lot of high-performance moments coming out from Logix and Tvik as well. Tvik had a great game on Anubis in general, but also ultimately it's kind of fell flat a little bit. And I was a bit disappointed as well because Florida was showing so much flexibility. You can see here Zebasai was also on the Sombra. We used to see a lot of Sombra on Anubis second point. You don't see it as often these days, but it's still a very popular, very powerful defensive position. But Valiant eventually overcame it, and a big part of that was Soon. It was kind of the Soon show a lot of the way. Agility's also very impressive.
Best team at that pack. I think that the Philadelphia Fusion would like to have a word with the Valiant, because to me, I think that team is the one that is really being able to gun for the top based on the synergies that their DPS do have displayed.
I think Soon makes a pretty solid argument that they have the firepower to break into the top 3. You saw him going to work on the Widowmaker. Manitin and the crew tried to bring it back on the well, but overall, how did Ilios play out, fellas?
In general, it was just pretty much Valiant just dominating on a multitude of different heroes. Silkthread came in for this map number 3. We saw a bit of a sign of life, to be honest, out of Florida on the second round when it was
first 3 quarters. But now it's the Florida Mayhem standing strong and taking the win. Bren, you were saying it as the game was playing out. This is Florida's strength right now. If you look at all of the maps and the modes, for some reason, they're excelling on Dorado.
Yes, statistically, Dorado is the one that they seem the strongest on. I feel like it fits their kind of play style in terms of the way the map is laid out as well. Definitely benefits to Vic and Logix having a good game. Swoosh also, I mean, Monty actually made reference to this multiple times during the game. Swoosh was committing so much to shutting down both Soon and Kariv, trying to make sure they had minimal impact in this game. It's a big part of why they actually ended up winning it, because their play style on this map is so drastically different from how they play other maps.
I also think on the first push from the Mayhem, they busted out the Pharah, being able to just recognize the composition that the Valiant was running, which was Genji Tracer, and you pick a Pharah into that, you're going to be able to zoom right past the first point, start building up some steam.
Will win Dorado, so they will come away with this with at least 1 map win.
And this has been one of their best maps this season.
For sure.
I'm not surprised this is the one that they would take. Had a pretty good offense.
This is going to be a winning fight for the Gladiators.
And it is a brawl. Houston Outlaws again.
Great opening by Remix this.
Here comes Cool Matt back on the point.
That was a dominant showing from Houston.
The Los Angeles Gladiators have got a full head of steam.
Houston Outlaws trying to grind out this win.
Reset on this. I'm not wanting to get too aggressive. Shaz is insane, by the way.
Whoa, Linkser just walks up on the flank.
This is so huge.
They're running into, Bren, because coming in, you said it's going to be all about the tanks today.
Yes, I did indeed, and that's especially been the case here today. The Gladiators' playstyle right now, it seems that the tanks on their side are dying a lot. Compare that to Houston Outlaws, where Muma and Kumat are prioritizing survivability, protecting the support. You can see Hydration going for these plays. He had a few big moments, but ultimately was getting shut down a lot of the times by Kumat, by Muma, and that's the big difference maker here, is that Gladiators are trying to set up plays, right, for their DPS players, trying to enable Hydration, trying to enable Surefall, but as a result, they're dying a lot much easier.
But I think it goes a bit deeper than that, and it's an issue that is alone with the tanks of the Gladiators right now. I mean, out there, they're looking like they're trying to turn this into a soup kitchen, because they just keep going forward on their own without any reason whatsoever. They don't need to create space, especially in a lot of the...
And this one went back and forth, but there were just so many headshots being picked up.
It's not just a lot of headshots, it's the positioning here. He was the one that mentioned, listen, the DPS is not just about aim, it's about the way that your team takes advantage of it. And the way that they set up, they had Jake on the left, Linkster on the right, and the Gladiators just could never pick on one side alone. They never successfully got to break through both sides. And when you have these 2 areas covered by these major threats, you really need to have a committed attack on one of them before you can crack any of these defenses.
Yeah, in general, I gotta say, it's not really... I am disappointed in Gladiators, to be honest, because this is a team that has so much potential in terms of the DPS they've got available to them, the support duo, which might I add is one of the best support duos in the league of Big Goose and Shaz.
He's going to show us triple DPS. Not this time. They went with Asher and Hydration, but the Gladiators were picked apart by this man, Linkser on the Widow, as well as the McCree. Went to town on the Well, and it was just a team effort overall from the Houston Outlaws.
They just could not hold a candle to the Outlaws for this. When they came down to Linkser, his McCree and the Widowmaker were just a world above what Asher was bringing to the table, especially here this time around. I mean, sure, we get to see Asher get the better of Linkster, but the team effort in Muma and Jake's Tracer to not only zero him out, but put him in an unfavorable situation on the Widow battle just made his job that much harder.
Yeah, when people say, you know, I do go on about Linkster quite a bit, about how good he is at the game and how when he's performing, he's one of the best DPS players in the league, but it's absolutely true.
By the way, right here,
these days.
Gladiators tapped out. They must have tapped out for game 4 because they did not push the payload twice. He literally just abandoned it, and
reminds me of my matchmaking games, Crumbs.
Yeah, it's like, at least keep the Zen on it, guys. You can throw Discord.
Oh, it's just a dominant victory here from the Houston Outlaws. And a hush of disbelief for the Gladiators.
With a really nice Game 5 between the Dallas Fuel and the Boston Uprising. Boston walks away with a big victory there. The Valiant go up to 4-2 as they take down the Mayhem, and the Gladiators just fell at the hands of the Houston Outlaws.